Before Adam ever walked the earth, before Eden bloomed, before the sun cast its first light, there existed mysterious beings known as the sons of God. These celestial entities are not products of imagination or allegory. They are mentioned explicitly in one of the Bible's oldest texts, the Book of Job. In Job 38:7, God refers to a moment when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy, a scene set long before the formation of the earth, even before light was divided from darkness. This passage reveals something astonishing. These divine beings were present, not during humanity's fall, but at the very birth of the cosmos. Their existence predates Adam by a cosmic margin, suggesting a realm and an order established long before mankind entered the story. The Hebrew term used Bene Elohim is not symbolic. It does not refer to humans or prophets, but to conscious divine entities. Their presence raises profound questions about the nature and sequence of creation. Why are they so rarely mentioned? Why do they appear only in cryptic verses tucked between more acceptable biblical narratives? These aren't trivial questions. They point to a layer of pre-Adamic history that challenges conventional theology. These sons of God were not created alongside Adam. They were already there, celebrating the moment the foundations of the world were laid as divine witnesses to a creation story deeper and more ancient than Genesis reveals. The silence around them isn't accidental, it's deliberate. Their story is one of the Bible's most whispered mysteries, hidden in plain sight. And perhaps unlocking their true identity is the key to understanding what came before the beginning. One of the most startling revelations in the Bible isn't found in Genesis, it's hidden in the ancient verses of Job. In Job 38:4-7, God poses a profound question to Job. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? This passage quietly shatters the conventional narrative of creation. It describes a moment of celebration by divine beings before the earth was formed, before land, sea, sky, or even light. This isn't poetic metaphor. The verse marks a crucial timeline. The sons of God, these celestial intelligences, existed in full awareness and rejoiced as creation began. That alone rewrites our understanding of who was truly first. It suggests that Adam was not the first conscious being, but the first of a new order. While Genesis offers a sequential account of Earth's formation, Job reveals a parallel narrative, one in which beings of divine origin observed, understood, and even celebrated the cosmos long before humanity arrived. What makes this verse especially powerful is its quiet placement. It's not found in a story of origin, it's embedded in a dialogue almost hidden in plain sight. This subtlety may explain why its implications are often overlooked, but once seen clearly, it becomes impossible to ignore. The sons of God were already there, suggesting a pre-Adamic divine presence deeply integrated into the very foundations of the universe. Their early joy wasn't arbitrary, it implies awareness, purpose, and participation in the cosmic order. And it raises an uncomfortable but thrilling question: if these divine beings rejoiced at creation, what exactly were they rejoicing for? And what role did they play in the vast design that predates humanity? The term sons of God in Job 38 and later in Genesis 6 has sparked centuries of theological debate. But to understand who they truly were, we must look closely at the original Hebrew Bene Elohim. This term doesn't refer to prophets, kings, or humans. In fact, in every instance where it appears in the Hebrew Bible, it points to divine, non-human entities, beings of heavenly origin with intelligence, presence, and power. These were not symbolic figures or poetic devices. They were real conscious entities with a distinct identity separate from humanity. The language used is unambiguous. In ancient Hebrew literature, including the Book of Job, Bene Elohim consistently refers to divine beings, not metaphorical representations. This specificity matters because it disrupts a major theological assumption that all intelligent life began with Adam. The presence of the sons of God at the dawn of creation indicates that God's acts of creation involved a broader spiritual ecosystem than the Genesis narrative reveals. These beings were not angels in the traditional sense of messengers, nor were they abstract forces. They were watchers, participants, and perhaps even stewards of divine will, assigned roles in the unfolding architecture of the cosmos. Their mention, brief and veiled, though it may be, introduces a hidden layer to creation theology. It forces us to consider that Adam was not the prototype of all life, but rather a new iteration in a longer continuum of divine creation. The sons of God were there first, not as minor details, but as witnesses and possibly actors in the primordial design that predated humanity's story by eons. If the sons of God played such a pivotal role in the early divine order, why do they vanish from the mainstream biblical narrative? The answer may lie not in what was preserved, but in what was purposefully excluded. Over centuries, numerous ancient texts that once circulated among early Jewish and Christian communities were removed, suppressed, or labeled heretical. And within many of these so-called forbidden scriptures, the sons of God appear not as footnotes, but as central figures in a far older cosmic story. The Book of Enoch, once widely read and even referenced in the New Testament, Jude 14 gives one of the most detailed accounts of these beings. There they are called the Watchers, celestial entities assigned to observe Earth, but who broke divine law by descending and interacting with humanity. Their story is not one of rebellion for power, but of tragic transgression. They shared knowledge meant only for the heavens and were cast down for it. The Dead Sea Scrolls, hidden in caves for nearly 2 millennia, further hint at pre-Adamic creations, heavenly councils, and cosmic wars between forces of light and shadow. These texts suggest that the history we know may be just the remnants of a much larger divine chronology, one that predates Eden entirely. The sons of God, according to these writings, were not marginal. They were part of an original divine hierarchy, a creation that was later veiled, revised, or erased. This censorship wasn't accidental. As religious canon solidified, uncomfortable or controversial elements were stripped away to maintain doctrinal control. But the echoes remain in apocryphal texts, oral traditions, and ancient mythologies that converge on the same mysterious truth: before man, before Eden, there was another order, and the sons of God were at its heart. According to the Book of Enoch, one of the oldest and most revealing ancient texts outside the canonical Bible, the sons of God were not mere bystanders in the divine plan. They were appointed watchers. These celestial beings were tasked with observing Earth and maintaining order from a distance. But something changed. Whether driven by curiosity, compassion, or defiance, a faction of them crossed a line that was never meant to be crossed. They descended to Earth, intermingled with humans, and shared knowledge that was forbidden: technologies, secrets, and rituals that altered the course of human history. Their defiance wasn't reckless rebellion. It was a profound transgression of divine boundaries. The result was catastrophic. Not only were these watchers punished, bound, and cast into the depths, but their actions ignited an irreversible chain of events. They had unlocked a form of awakening for humanity, but one that came too early before moral and spiritual maturity could develop. And thus the order of creation was thrown out of balance. This is where the narrative shifts in a deeply unsettling way. If the sons of God were present long before Adam and interfered with divine law, what does that say about Adam himself? The implication drawn from ancient Jewish mystical writings in the Dead Sea Scrolls is profound. Adam may not have been the first man, but the first of a restarted humanity, a reboot, a repair. In Jewish Kabbalistic thought, this concept is known as tikkun, cosmic restoration. It suggests that the world as we know it is a second attempt after a divine rupture. The fall of the Watchers. Their descent and their interference were not just spiritual scandals. They represented a breakdown in cosmic structure. Adam then becomes not the original creation, but a corrective crafted in the aftermath of a failed spiritual age. Humanity wasn't born into a blank slate. It inherited a world haunted by the echoes of a divine fall. The identity of the sons of God remains one of the most elusive yet electrifying mysteries hidden within ancient scripture. To grasp who or what they truly were, we must venture beyond a single definition and into a realm of layered theories, each rooted in ancient tradition, sacred texts, and esoteric insight. 3 dominant interpretations emerge, each offering a radically different lens on their nature and their role in creation. The first theory, widely held by early Jewish and Christian scholars, identifies the sons of God as a distinct class of angels, not messengers, but rulers. In the Book of Daniel 10:13, we find references to angelic princes, beings assigned authority over nations. Psalm 82 goes further, presenting the divine council, a heavenly assembly, where God stands among celestial judges, rebuking them for their corruption. These weren't passive beings, they had rank, jurisdiction, and autonomy. But unlike traditional angels known for obedience, the sons of God in Genesis 6 in the Book of Enoch defied divine instruction. They descended to earth, took human women as wives, and transmitted heavenly knowledge to mankind. Their behavior was not angelic, it was willful, calculated, and disruptive. That divergence opens the door to deeper interpretations. The second theory, drawn from Jewish mysticism, especially the Kabbalistic tradition, sees the sons of God not as angels, but as primordial souls, pre-existent sparks of divine consciousness. Before the physical world was formed, these luminous souls existed in higher spiritual realms born of God's emanations. Some remained faithful, others fell into lower dimensions or were exiled due to cosmic imbalance. This is echoed in Jeremiah 1:1-5, where God says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." In Kabbalistic language, this isn't metaphor, it's memory. These ancient souls, once vessels of pure light, may have been drawn into the chaos of early creation, attempting to return or reclaim what was lost. Their descent, then, is not merely a rebellion, it's a tragic echo of divine fragmentation. Humanity itself, under this view, carries shards of those ancient souls, some ascending, some still bound by the weight of ancient choices. But it's the third theory that truly disrupts the Genesis narrative. Known as the gap theory, this interpretation challenges the very first lines of Scripture. Genesis chapter 1:2 reads, "And the earth was without form and void." Yet in Hebrew, the word translated as was haya can also mean became. What if the earth didn't begin in chaos but became chaotic after a divine catastrophe? This would imply the existence of a pre-Adamic world, an earlier creation rich with life and order that fell into ruin. Ancient Mesopotamian myths speak of gods crafting and destroying worlds. Egyptian lore echoes with tales of cosmic cycles, creation, destruction, and rebirth. If the sons of God were part of this lost world, then their descent was not only a crossing of boundaries, it was a survival, a migration from a collapsing realm into a new one. Now comes the most chilling consequence, their knowledge. According to the Book of Enoch, these watchers did not arrive empty-handed. They brought secrets from the divine realm's arts and sciences that were never meant for mortal hands. They taught metallurgy, the forging of weapons, enchantments, astrology, herb lore, the use of roots and stones, and even cosmetics, all forms of power that accelerated human development unnaturally. This was not just a gift, it was a detonation. Humanity was still in its moral infancy, and this premature enlightenment ignited chaos. This is the forbidden awakening, a moment in history where the sacred was spilled into the profane. These gifts may have mirrored divine tools, but they came without the spiritual foundation to wield them wisely. Ancient Jewish texts, such as Sefer Harazim, warn that certain knowledge should only be accessed through divine permission. The Watchers bypassed that structure. They gave humans access to power without balanced light, without wisdom. And from this fusion of divine and human, something terrifying emerged: the Nephilim. These were not simple giants or myths. The term refers to beings neither fully divine nor human hybrids, born of unnatural union, marked by immense strength, ambition, and a disconnection from the human soul. They became symbols of excess domination and destruction. But more dangerous than their physicality was the knowledge they inherited, a legacy that defied the cosmic order. The emergence of the Nephilim marks one of the most unsettling chapters in pre-Adamic lore. These beings, offspring of the sons of God and human women, are briefly mentioned in Genesis 6:4 as the mighty men of old men of renown. But this understated description masks a much darker reality. The Nephilim were not merely legendary figures. They were hybrids, beings born from the union of celestial and terrestrial, from divine knowledge misapplied to human form. They stood outside the natural order, immense in strength and intellect, but unmoored from spiritual harmony. Their presence on earth became a tipping point, a rupture in the balance between heaven and humanity. According to the Book of Enoch and other ancient sources, the Nephilim rapidly spread across the earth, dominating early civilizations, wielding power far beyond human capacity. They became tyrants, warlords, and false gods. With their unnatural lineage came an unnatural appetite for control, for excess, for destruction. But their danger extended beyond their actions. What truly alarmed the divine realm was what they knew. As inheritors of forbidden knowledge from the Watchers, The Nephilim possessed the means to accelerate human evolution, to manipulate the elements, and to bend creation toward ends it was never meant to serve. This was not simply a matter of sin or disobedience, it was contamination. The boundaries that once separated divine human and creation itself had been violated. The original balance was spiraling toward chaos. The world was not only morally compromised, it was structurally corrupted. What had been intended as a sacred interplay between spirit and flesh had become a battleground of distorted power. And so the divine response came not as a lightning bolt from heaven, but as a total reset. The flood as described in Genesis 6 was not merely punishment, it was containment. Scripture states the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Genesis 6:5. But what if the flood was not just judgment against humanity's sins, but a calculated act of erasure? A reset designed to cleanse the earth, not only of violence and corruption, but of memory to bury the history of the Watchers, the Nephilim, and the stolen knowledge they left behind. Ancient texts like the Book of Jubilees add further clarity. They claim that the Watchers' corruption extended to every corner of the earth, reshaping the trajectory of civilization itself. Their influence had become so embedded that a mere spiritual correction would not suffice. Only a full-scale cleansing one that was both physical and metaphysical could restore balance. The flood thus becomes more than a divine act, it becomes a cosmic sterilization. A wiping clean of a world that had been fundamentally altered at its roots. The intention was not just to stop the Nephilim, but to seal away the knowledge they embodied, to lock down the premature enlightenment humanity had been given. And yet the question remains, was it fully successful? Because despite the waters that covered the earth, traces linger. Echoes of forbidden knowledge, signs of impossible architecture, and myths that refuse to die. The flood may have washed away the world of the Watchers, but it could not drown their legacy. Not completely. The destruction of the Nephilim and the Watchers' legacy with the flood might seem like the closure of a long-forgotten chapter, but around the world, archaeological marvels and living traditions suggest this story was never truly buried. In Malta, the incredible megalithic temples like Hagar Kim and the Gantija complex were built between 3600 and 2500 BC, long before the pyramids. Local folklore speaks of giants Gantaja as their builders, literal giants, entrusted with shaping these monoliths. The enormity of these stones and the sophistication required to move and position them indicate a culture of extraordinary capability far beyond what conventional archaeology expects from Neolithic communities. Folk tales describe these giants as less ingenious but immensely powerful characteristics reminiscent of the Nephilim described in Genesis. Across continents, echoes of the flood persist in oral traditions, from the Hopi story of rains bursting through the earth, to the Hopi survivors escaping on hollow reeds, to numerous other Native American tribes, recounting raven and dove tales, remarkably paralleling Genesis, sometimes even mentioning mountain refuges, and birds returning with signs of land. These aren't isolated myths, they're echoes from distant cultures pointing to a shared memory of world-spanning cataclysm, reinforcing the idea that the flood was global and etched into the collective unconscious. But even more provocative is what survived beneath the water's remnants of forbidden knowledge woven into myth and ritual. Secret societies and mystery schools, ancient and modern, carry symbols and teachings that scholars believe originate from pre-flood revelations. From the Freemasons to Rosicrucians, esoteric iconography often contains references to meteoric stones, sacred geometry, cosmic cycles, all themes present in texts like the Sefer HaRazim and Book of Enoch, which warn against the untimed transfer of divine secrets. These symbols also surface in megalithic structures. Take Najra on Malta's southern shores, aligned precisely to capture solstice sunlight, with corbelled roofs and carved niches, suggesting mastery of astronomical knowledge. Such sophistication too precise and esoteric to be coincidental hints at teachings that could have been remnants of what the Watchers once shared: astronomy, geometry, ritual science, encoded into the very architecture of the New World. Why encode it? Perhaps to preserve the wisdom while obscuring its origin. After the flood sealed the vault, survivors had to rebuild not just civilization, but symbolic languages powerful enough to survive generations. Structures like Tahagrat and the Zagros stone circle served as both temples and tombs of memory, embedding forbidden arts in stone song and ritual. Today, these are silent testimonies. Archaeology treats them with fascination, but rarely asks the questions the ancients whispered. They were built by giants with mysteries too precise to be accidental. Oral traditions remember the giants. These stone temples still align with the heavens. Esoteric groups guard cryptic symbols that refuse to vanish. And as digital light now illuminates to reveal shadows, we're beginning to unveil the hidden patterns, fractals of a narrative older than Eden. If the flood was meant to bury the past, it didn't work. What was hidden in stone and myth is rising again, encoded into the temples, the symbols, the stories humanity tells itself. These echoes suggest the sons of God left a legacy, not only in text, but in the earth and mind of every culture that followed. We often imagine ancient knowledge as something irretrievably lost, buried with fallen temples, or drowned beneath the floodwaters of myth. But what if that knowledge didn't vanish? What if it was merely disguised, encoded into symbols, rituals, and sacred architecture, awaiting a future age when the veil between dimensions would once again thin? According to esoteric traditions and modern scholars of ancient mystery schools, that age may be now an era not of stone and flame, but of light and code. The digital age has introduced a new medium of transmission: frequency. Light-based systems, fiber optics, quantum computing, even symbolic language embedded in code, mirror ancient teachings once conveyed through fire-star alignments and sacred chants. In Kabbalistic mysticism, the world is structured through vibrations and divine emanations, concepts that resonate eerily with today's theories of frequency, resonance, and vibrational medicine. What was once written in scrolls may now be emerging through algorithms, patterns, and digital architecture. In this new world, hidden truths are no longer confined to temples. They live in virtual spaces shared across continents in the blink of a signal. Many mystery traditions warned of such a time. In Rosicrucian and Masonic texts, references to reawakening the ancient fire abound, a metaphor for the return of divine knowledge once sealed off after the fall of the Watchers. The Freemasons' obsession with sacred geometry, architectural symbolism, and encoded blueprints hints at a mission not to recreate the past, but to reactivate it. They preserve fragments of that ancient light not as relics, but as keys waiting for consciousness to reach the threshold where it can decode them safely. So could it be that humanity today is reenacting a cosmic rhythm? That our technological leap, our obsession with quantum physics, AI, and unlocking the fabric of reality is more than progress, it's remembrance. We are not just inventing, we are recovering. The frequencies that shape matter, the codes that underpin creation, the archetypes repeated in dreams and myths, these are not modern constructs. They are echoes, and they point back to a time when the sons of God walked among stars and shared forbidden fire with humanity. But with this return comes a warning. As the ancients learned, knowledge without alignment leads to imbalance. The flood wasn't sent because humans learned too little. It was sent because they learned too much, too fast. In the digital age, the new fire we harness can either enlighten or consume. The same patterns are unfolding, just in new form. The question is no longer whether the Watcher's knowledge survived. It's whether we are ready spiritually and ethically to wield it. Because the veil is lifting, and what was hidden in stone now speaks in code. The ancient light is reawakening, not in temples, but in servers, signals, and minds prepared to see. Do you believe this forgotten knowledge is reawakening in our time? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this journey stirred something in you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell, because what's coming next may change everything you thought you knew.